Alright, what's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back with Defenders Beyond, and this is the conclusion, and yes, the one above all makes his return. Now, this story is going to shift up everything you know about the one above all, and I love the way that it's done, right? So, in the last video that we did, we basically picked up with kind of the conclusion of that little bit of a story, that the Defenders were effectively moving to what was called the House of Ideas. Now, this is a phrase that Al Ewing is using both in terms of the story, but as well as the real world. And the reason why is because Marvel Comics used to be called the House of Ideas. That was kind of their great big huge tag name. And so with that being the case, once Adam Brashear gets in here and he's met by the one above all, he's basically given the same line that more or less the one above all gives most everybody, right? I see through many eyes, I build with many hands. They are themselves, but they are also me. I am all powerful. My only weapon is love. The mystery intrigues me. I am as I am. I will be what I will be. I am the one above all. Now, to that, Adam Brashear's just kind of like, I don't think that's true. Now, that's one of the crazy things about this is because in response to that, the one above all launches an attack against them using all these different monsters. Now, here's the cool thing about this. If you're familiar with Marvel Comics, this is actually Al Ewing using Marvel's publishing history and then bringing it into the comic book. And the reason why I say that is because those of you guys who are not really familiar with the history of Marvel, long before Marvel was Marvel, you had Timely Comics. Timely Comics is where you got Jack Kirby and Joe Simon, who created like Captain America, right? Captain America Comics #1. Now, once superheroes stopped being popular after World War II, Timely Comics changed its name to Atlas Comics. And what Atlas Comics did, which is really where Stan Lee got his start, Atlas Comics was focusing on science fiction, monsters, different things like that. It wasn't until the 1960s with really Fantastic Four #1 that Marvel Comics became the Marvel Comics that we know. And this is so cool because these monsters you're seeing here, these are the old stories that Marvel published before superheroes emerged. So it's really one of these things where it's kind of Al Ewing offering this kind of commentary and saying like the one above all has always existed. It's always been around. It's been since the beginning of everything. And so these monsters that it's spewing out are the creatures that existed before like the multiverse exists as it exists now, which is why they're kind of referred to as like the beast from before or whatever the case happens to be. Now, the Defenders are able to get the upper hand on these guys pretty quickly, and for the most part, they're able to kind of take them out, but these beings are pretty powerful. And so in the midst of all this, what you do is you have Adam Brashear who says, I don't believe in any god who tests their creations. I've been tested enough, all of humanity has, but I do believe in a god who questions us and who asks us to question them. And that's when the one above all stops. And it simply says, then speak if you have understanding. And so this is where things get amazing, right? Because what Adam Brashear says here, really, he says like, there's no power that we can reach above yours. You're as high as we can go. That's what defines you. But does that truly make you above all? He says this is only the beginning of the journey, isn't it? The beginning of what you represent and what creates creation. Now, this is the thing, because his question, right, his statement, what creates creation, that's where the one above all responds. It says the place where the world of action ends and the world of creation begins. So for those of you guys who are unfamiliar, the one above all in Marvel Comics has historically been the top person, right? And different depictions of the one above all have taken place. For example, there was a story where the Fantastic Four met the one above all, and the one above all was depicted as Jack Kirby. There's been instances where it's been alluded that the one above all is basically Stan Lee. There was a point where the one above all appeared to Peter Parker and did not look like Stan Lee or Jack Kirby. So the one above all has always been kind of depicted as just this exceedingly powerful being and is the creation or the reason why all things exist. There's even this idea that the one above all is basically Marvel Publishing, right? The kind of combination of the writers, the artists, the editors, the editor-in-chief, everybody who decides what gets published in Marvel. But what Al Ewing is doing here is he's putting forward this idea that the cosmic hierarchy as we've seen it up to this point, the Phoenix Force, the Beyonders, so on and so forth, that's all just the tangible realm, right? That's a being out there who's really powerful and can do some stuff. What the one above all represents is the entrance into a whole nother level of hierarchy that exists out there as far as people who create things, right? Those individuals who are capable of creation. That when you have someone like the one above all, everybody who exists throughout the entirety of the Marvel multiverse would be powerless in the face of the one above all, because all it has to do is just wipe them from existence. And there's no conceivable means of bringing them back unless the one above all chooses to. That's the way its character always operated. But what Al Ewing is doing is saying the one above all is just the first in a new line of just these astronomically powerful cosmic beings that exist out there that are in charge of creating everything. And so it's a really, really awesome concept because this is a level of power we've never seen before. And so again, where you have Adam Brashear talking with the One Above All and asking what creates creation above everything, even your creators, is there a final guiding hand? Can there be? Do you know One Above All? The response is, the mystery intrigues me, Adam. I have my answers from you. What do you wish from me? And so that's when you kind of get this sort of statement that's made, right? Each one kind of asking for something in particular. Taya wants to know what's going on with her son, right? Galactus becoming the world devourer, because remember, she comes from the universe where Galactus originated before he ever became Galactus. But what the One Above All says here is, Taya, your son becomes the devourer of worlds, right? He's born into your reality as your son. Your universe and the multiverse will basically end. It'll be reborn, and he will be born into the new universe and even the new multiverse as Galactus. This is by my design. I intended it to be this way. So it's not some kind of grand cosmic mistake, despite the fact that it shocked you to learn that your son would become a person that just eradicates entire worlds in the new universe. It's just how I wanted things to be. And he says, but you cannot return to your cosmos with that knowledge. Now, of course, America Chavez asks about her sister. Al Ewing's response is, you will find her and more. Nothing that was made is ever lost, America Chavez. Tigra kind of wants to know what her purpose is, and the One Above All is just like, you have no real purpose, Tigra. And so as a result of that, you basically have this really cool instance where Adam Brashear asked the question, okay, the Defenders have a mission to complete. We were charged by eternity to travel into the cosmos and to find this grand cosmic threat. And so far, we found nothing. We've only found a hierarchy of cosmic beings. What's this grand threat? And what the One Above All says, and this is going to be mind-boggling insane. The One Above All says, behold and take what you can understand. The grail at the end of your quest is a single glimpse of the enigma to come. And so what they're looking at here, to the best of their ability to interpret it, is simply just a giant crown that stretches across all things that exist. And literally, Adam Brashear says it's a crown above all things. And so he simply says it's up to us to decode the cosmic symbolism. So basically, Al Ewing is just like, there is a source of power that exists out there that is beyond the One Above All. But at the end of the day, you're gonna have to wait to find out what it is. Because I'm not gonna tell you. Now, as most people are suspecting, this is only the second part in the trilogy. That you have the Defenders comic, which was written by Al Ewing. This is part 2, which is, you could argue it is like the Empire Strikes Back of the Defenders comic. Terrible analogy, I know. Just go with me on that. But then part 3 will be the Return of the Jedi, but hopefully it'll be better than the movie. But it'll be like the part 3 that kind of wraps everything up. But it's one of those interesting concepts, because in that moment, Loki chimes in and says, okay, so here's the thing. In our quest, when we were all brought together by basically the soul of Doctor Strange, we were shown a crown on the tarot cards. So this is the threat that we have to find some way to defeat. But ultimately, we have no earthly clue how to do this. We have no earthly clue how to pull this off. And so what Loki actually reveals is that the coming together of the Defenders as it exists, while it was orchestrated by Doctor Strange, Loki went along with it because what Loki seeks to do is to actually leave. That the power of the realm of the One Above All is that because it exists out there in the space where things are created, it exists outside the multiverse. Loki seeks to leave everything, walk away from the multiverse, the whole 9 yards. You could make a convincing argument here that what Loki's saying is he wants to enter basically into the real world. He wants to leave the world of fiction and enter into the real world. Now, the funny thing about this is that what we're also really given here is that while the Defenders don't necessarily get into a big conversation about it, they're all basically coming to this realization they're fictional characters. Their stories are guaranteed. The things that happen in their lives happen because they're supposed to, because they were created that way, right? Adam Brashear facing off against Ant-Man, Connor Sims, Loki and all his stories, America Chavez, and so on and so forth. It's all pre-written. It's like when Deadpool discovered that he was a fictional character. It's just that they're not killing the entirety of the Marvel Universe. But it's a cool thing because, of course, the Beyonder seemingly shows up out of nowhere in the midst of all this. But the idea behind it is that you do have Loki kind of given this idea that he could legitimately just leave. It's an opportunity available to him, that he could just walk away. He could leave the omniverse, the multiverse, step out into the real world. But the other part of this is that Adam Brashear chimes in with what's something that's known as the Bodhisattva vow. Now, I'm probably butchering the hell out of that pronunciation. I apologize if I am. But the entire idea behind this vow is, at least as far as the story goes, is that you had somebody named Siddhi Garbha, I think is how you pronounce that. Again, I'm terrible when it comes to pronunciations like that. But this person vowed not to attain Buddhahood until all hells were emptied, because there is no enlightenment until all are enlightened. There is no freedom until all are free. And so the important thing here, and this is what's kind of nuts about this, the kind of stuff Al Ewing's throwing out here, the revelation by Adam Brashear and the Defenders that they're fictional characters, Loki trying to leave and walk away, right? This idea of a statement being made directly to Loki that at the end of the day, he's like, reality wants me in some old shape. It wants me to be what I used to be. And the kind of counter statement being like, do you think that it can, God of Stories? Like, do you think it didn't try? That kind of situation. This is all moving or all kind of pointing towards the idea of a massive paradigm shift in Marvel Comics, that this notion of what they're kicking off, or at least what they're alluding to, is some massive reworking of the landscape. And the reason why I say that is because all this puts forward the idea that the Defenders themselves, accessing the realm of the One Above All, learning the fictional history of characters, it can all be changed. It can be rewritten, that they are given a status quo, but they can leave the status quo. They can alter the status quo. They can change what they want their stories to be. It kind of smells like a bit of a reboot to a degree. Now, I don't know if that's gonna happen. It's probably me just as a Marvel Comics fan saying like, it's high time you guys reboot. We know that like Jonathan Hickman and Marvel are working on something massive coming out in 2023 this year. It's supposed to happen in the summer. I don't know if it's gonna be a reboot. Marvel needs to reboot. Mariah literally just finished Secret Wars, and I asked her, doesn't that story end where it felt like it was supposed to be a reboot? And she's like, yeah, do they reboot? And I was like, nope. And she's like, that sucks, because it feels like they were supposed to reboot. Like, it's kind of what it feels like to me. But again, it may just be me as the person wanting Marvel to reboot, kind of feeding my own desire, right? But the important thing is that the Beyonder himself had actually gone along with this whole thing just to see if he could. That the reality of the Beyonder is that it doesn't want to go back to the second cosmos. It doesn't want to go back to its place where it just hangs around and waits until something pops off with the Celestials and the Beyonders have to step in. That it doesn't really give us a whole lot of expose into like their mindset regarding Secret Wars, the Avengers, the new Avengers run by Jonathan Hickman, the collapse of the multiverse. But what it does say is this desire is to literally leave everything in creation and see what all's out there, to see if it could possibly even just create its own thing. And so what happens is this realm is basically destroyed by the Beyonder, and then it literally takes off into parts unknown. We have no idea where his story goes. And it could very well be the Beyonder does achieve a whole new level of power, or the Beyonder potentially even takes the power of the One Above All, which is just downright scary. But the thing about this is Al Ewing kind of setting the seeds for all these different character stories going forward, right? Loki still has the Eternity Mask, and while he does end up traveling back to Earth, he goes back to his place. What this means is that with Eternity's Mask, his power is equal to whoever he faces off against. If he fights the One Above All, his power becomes equal to the One Above All. That's how the Eternity Mask works. There's no limit to it. And while you do have Taya, who was supposed to go back to her reality, the response of Adam Brashear is, but the One Above All didn't say when. All the One Above All said is that you cannot go back to your universe with knowledge of what your son becomes, because you may warn your son, you may stop him from becoming Galactus, whatever the case happens to be. These things kind of have to happen because the character exists. Therefore, the circumstances must exist for him to exist the way that he does. And so she basically just kind of lingers around. She becomes a part of the Defenders. She effectively joins the team. But again, Al Ewing leaves it open-ended. He's just like, yeah, I mean, they haven't found, like, they know it's the crown, but they don't know what it means, and they haven't really found the main enemy itself. It's just kind of a glimpse of what awaits them. So what it looks like is going into presumably this quote-unquote third part of the Defender story, things are going to be crazy, and we're going to end up coming across cosmic entities with stupid levels of power that we didn't even know existed before. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. Let me know what you think about this change with the One Above All, and I will catch you all later. Peace.